Christmas is upon us. And at every holiday, it seems like a lot of carnivores have a hard time figuring out what they want to eat to mark the occasion. Yes, a lot of people are perfectly happy eating ribeye steaks every day, every meal, every day for the rest of their lives. But on holidays, you should, try to up your game a little bit. Enjoy the day, maybe, but without breaking the diet or going too far off plan. And what says Christmas dinner more than a prime rib roast? Prime rib is tricky. It confounds a lot of people. It can be very difficult to cook. But there's actually a really easy way to cook it online. Found where the instructions are all over the internet. And when I found it a couple years ago, it turned out to be magical. And that is what we call the 500-degree method. Talk about that here in a little bit more as we go step by step, and I'll show you what I made. Right now, this is the time of year where that carnivores love stocking up on meat because prime rib roasts are often available at Walmart and Safeway and other places pretty cheap, a pretty good cost price per pound. Now, what is a prime rib roast? It's essentially the same thing as a ribeye roast. Usually, it's often with the bone in or the bone or without the bones, depending on your preference. They tend to be trimmed a little aggressively for my taste in terms of ribeye steaks, but this is still a great way to get your ribeyes to restock your ribeye supply going into the winter to avoid the normal time of year price for ribeye steaks. The one that I'll show you here in a minute was bought at Walmart for pretty cheap. It was $10 a pound or something, which is not a bad price for a ribeye roast. So what are you going to need for this? It depends. If you are a strict carnivore, meaning you do not put spices on your meat besides salt, then you will need the butter that I'm going to show you, or the regular version of the butter I'm going to show you, and whatever salt you use. Preferably it's Redmond's real salt or some other land-based sea salt, or unless you've got some really wonderful oceanic sea salt that is low or non-existent mercury in it. I've made videos about that before. So the first thing I'm going to show you here is the ribeye roast. This is what I used for the meat. This thing was, again, a pretty good deal at Walmart. Right now, Walmart's got them for pretty cheap, although my local grocery store actually has them for cheaper but lower grade. I bought one of those to cut steaks out of. But this is a pretty common sight at Walmart. They've got to have 100 of these things in their back storeroom at any given time. So they use these for, they put these out this time of year pretty commonly. The next thing you will need, of course, is an oven, but you will need, for the way I did this, the Kerrygold herb butter. Or you can make your own if you want. It's going to be, I think, thyme and sage and a few other things. But this is a pre-made Kerrygold butter. It doesn't look like it's got much salt in it, so add salt as you will. Get this stuff to room temperature. I put this stuff in a carafe in the microwave for a few seconds to get it nice and soft. I used 2 sticks of butter for this around 5-pound roast. The one I'm going to do for my family on Christmas is 7 pounds, so I might go with 3 sticks of this butter, and you'll see why when we get to that. But here we take and we, mash it up into a nice, essentially, paste. We preheat our oven to 500 degrees. And while we do that, we then cut the roast out of its packaging. You'll see that at least this one came in mesh. It was meshed up, tied up with twine, and that's because the Walmart ones have the bones separated from the roast, but not completely separated. I don't know why they do a partial, but it's cut up. They tie it up to the thing so it cooks as if it wasn't separated anyway. If you want the ribs separate, you can cut those off and roast them or throw them in a pellet grill like I typically do, but I left these attached. You then take your meat, pat it dry, because you don't want a wet surface when you're doing this. And you take your softened butter and you cover the roast with the butter. It doesn't have to be perfect. If you're a perfectionist, feel free. But cover the roast as much as you possibly can with this butter. This stuff will add a lot of flavor to that meat. Next thing you're going to need is a good old-fashioned roasting pan if you can get one. This kind is the kind that's the metal-sided one. There's a small wire tray at the bottom. I put this thing on the wire tray, on the wire rack, and this is where the trick comes in. The cooking for this is at 500 degrees. It's a high temperature. I know what you're thinking. But here's what happens. As soon as you put that roast in the oven, get it to 500, you put it in that 500 degrees, and you cook it for 5 minutes per pound, including the fraction of a pound. So this thing was around 5 pounds. It came out to 29 minutes in a few seconds. So I cooked it at 500 degrees for 29 minutes. I set an alarm. And when it got close to the time to be over, I hovered over that oven. And here's why. Because when the alarm went off, I turned off the oven and I left the door closed. Let me repeat myself. Leave the door closed. You leave the roast in there for 2 hours. That's it. At 2 hours, it'll be done. This is a relatively quick way to cook a beef ribeye roast, a prime rib roast. So what does this thing look like when it's done? Well, let me show you. You can see the butter. It's almost like a consommé that has come off of this because it's got some of the fat from the roast is rendered into the beef or into the butter. And so I end up pouring it into a carafe. It makes a nice thing to drizzle onto to the steaks you cut off of it. I cut off the ribs. I slice this thing up into steaks. And this is the final product. A wonderful, wonderful, carnivore-friendly Christmas dinner. For your non-carnivore friends and family who may be over, or give them some health-conscious sides of your choosing, whatever it is they want. I can't think in those terms anymore. I've been carnivore long enough that I have to really think about what people eat with these things. But this was enough for me by itself. I think on Christmas we're going to have hollandaise sauce again with this, just because hollandaise is great. It's an egg and butter-based sauce. What's not to love? But we're going to have that. Maybe some sausages or something on the side. I don't know. We ended up eating this thing. It took us about 2.5 days to eat this. 5 pounds. My wife had 1 serving. I had some myself 2 days in a row, and then it was gone because it was only 5 pounds. And when you're on the carnivore diet, eating a couple pounds of beef at a time is not that unusual in our circles, especially if you're physically active like I usually am. I'm going to do another video like this for another cut as an alternative, because there are other options that you can have for an interesting Christmas dinner, sticking with ruminant animals. So let me know if there's a cut that you do on Christmas that isn't just a typical ribeye steak. That is something unusual for you, the way to make your carnivore experience a little bit better. Let me know in the comments, please. Like and subscribe if you haven't. It really does help. Sharing this on social media helps a lot as well. I'm Anthony Stine, the Practical Carnivore. Thanks for watching.